So this is a rag rug that Victoria made, and it's Victoria's first rag rug, and it's a really good demonstration of the different types of rag rugging you can do. Just one thing to point out at first is the edge here. One of the things that you need to be really careful about is not hooking or doing a stitch too close to the edge, because the Hessian frays. So what you should do is either turn it over at the edge and maybe just put a few stitches across there, or make sure that you've got at least an inch turnover and that you're not hooking right up to the edge. This is the back of a rag rug. Sometimes I think they're as beautiful as the front. So this stitch you can do in two different ways, where you either work from the front, where it's called progging, or you work from the back where you're pushing through, and that's prodding. This is an example of hooking, where you're working from the front of the fabric and hooking the material through. And this is where you're working on the back of the fabric, you're the front of the fabric but pushing through. So it's a slightly different technique, and you can see that you get a slightly different effect with that. Another thing to think about is the different types of fabric, because first of all, some fabrics are easier to work with than others, and these are the thinner types. As you can see, this one is very fine silk, or a kind of nylon or viscous kind of material. That's much easier to work with than the thicker wool. But obviously the wool gives you a much more dense effect. So think very carefully about the types of material that you're using, and also how they fray at the edges. This material frays, whereas the wool and these types don't fray quite so much, although you can kind of trim it back afterwards when you've finished.